When you're flying FPV and using a homemade ground station, one of the things that it's handy to have is a sunshade to cover the screen to stop it from glare from the sun, and also to help you spot things on the screen when the contrast is a little bit washed out and you're flying in less than ideal conditions. So what I'm going to do is show you how I made this screen. This is the one that's actually installed and made for my main FPV ground station. You can see how I made this ground station in one of my other videos, but what I'll do is I'm actually going to make a little baby version of it using this small box that I've got that I actually use to cart around batteries when I'm flying. And what we'll do is, because it's a very similar kind of layout to the bigger box, is we'll actually make a mini version on screen. When I was trying to figure out how to do this, I went through a number of thoughts. Was it going to be cardboard covered in black felt? How was I going to make a screen? And in the end I made it from something that was very cheap and inexpensive, using this stuff, which is the Dollar Tree foam board. Now in the UK you can get this from places like Hobbycraft, and it's about £7–8 for a big kind of A0 sheet. So we'll use this stuff and we'll fit it into the top of the screen here, and I'll show you the steps to go through, how you measure it out, how you cut it, and also then how you fit it into the lid. So the first thing we need to think about is, how big does it need to be? So we've got to measure the distance around the top so that we can cut out a piece from the foam board that fits and will provide a nice sunshade without being too big. Ideally the sunshade should also be small enough so it will actually fit inside the box for easy carrying, because this foam board isn't very robust. If it gets damaged or creased, it's not waterproof, so you want to be able to kind of put it away somewhere safe, and if it's small enough to fit inside the box, that'll work. So the first thing you have to do really is we need to think about how we're going to make something that's flat fit into the top of the case. So if we go into graphics, here's the top of the case with a screen in the middle of it. Obviously we can't do a simple right angle bend because that would just not work, the corners are rounded. So what we actually have to do is create two smaller bends that give us two 45-degree bends that go inside the radius of the corners and provide a nice clean fit. So there are four actually that we need to take. The first one is how far out you want the sunshade to project. So you need to measure from the screen up out into fresh air. The way I did it was I put the FPV station on the ground and I imagined I was looking at the screen, and then kind of figured out where the sunshade would fit nicely but not obscure my view of the screen. The other three are then on the diagram. The first one is the measurement across the top, which is X, so you need to figure out the measurement into the corners but stopping at the start of the curve of the corner of the box. The second is Y, which is the distance across that corner, and the final one is Z, is how far you want it to go down. Now if you know those four dimensions, then what you can do is you can create this template where you have the top and the corner pieces, and then you have the side pieces with a bevel in them so that it goes back into the box. Now ideally the way you should measure this and make it, and I didn't do it on the big one, but if I ever did it again I would, is to make sure that the Y and Z measurements are half of X, and that way when you fold it flat to put it into the box, you've only got two widths of the card, and we'll show what that looks like later on. So now we've got those measurements, I'll take the measurements on this box. So on this box itself, from corner to corner, it's actually about 16.5. The corner across is probably only 1, actually, it doesn't need to be that much. And then going down the side, we won't have it going all the way, it could be about 7. So Now I've got those measurements, let's lay it out on one of the pieces of card and actually cut the board. So the next step is to actually cut the board. So I've already cut this one so it's the right depth. So I've decided that about 9 centimeters is about the right distance out from the board, and then I've also cut it to length so it's actually ready for me to cut the crease for the side and also for the corner in both ends. But let's talk about how you cut this. This board, if I show you, has been cut on one side with a dull knife, and that's what happens to the inside of the foam. It actually pulls and tears and looks horrid. On the other side is cut with a sharp knife, and it leaves a beautiful clean crisp edge. Now when I first started playing with this board, tried all kinds of knives. I tried a Stanley knife, a carpet knife, even tried this trusty little guy which I've used in everything else on every other project, even snapped off a new tip to give me a perfectly sharp point. Wasn't good enough, and in the end ended up using this Xacto knife. Now a lot of guys on YouTube will talk about how sharp Xacto is. I can absolutely testify to the fact that these guys are seriously sharp. This is the blade that came on it originally. I've actually replaced the blade while we're doing this so it's as sharp as possible. These blades are the number 11, which are the ones that go to quite a fine tip. So you need a metal edge ruler, obviously, and you then need to just pull the knife through the board. Don't force it, let the knife do the cutting. If you feel the knife is jumping, then stop and reapply the pressure, because what's happening, that jumping feeling, is this, which is not good enough, and it probably means that your blade isn't sharp. So let me cut this piece and we'll come back and we'll look at what we do next. So I've cut the board now, and hopefully you can see, using the sharp blade, you get these beautiful crisp clean edges that you don't mind looking at the edge of the sunshade. Now the way I've done these scores, I've just cut most of the way through but not all the way, and what we need to do to make the hinges is just fold over and we get this nice clean edge, and then run a piece, a bead of hot glue where you can see the paper, and then wipe that hot glue down with a piece of scrap all the way through. Now it's exactly the same way as making a hinge on a plane. So the hot glue will do two things. One, it will reinforce the hinge, but it will also make sure the paper doesn't start to come apart on the inside. So now we've made these hinges, let me finish the last one. I'll do the hot glue off screen. Here's the case that we're fitting it into, and there we are. We can see that the sunshade fits great, and because of that bevel on the corner, it actually fits really neatly. Now the next thing is, how then do we attach this new sunshade, which by the way folds down, and as you can see, this is exactly why you want these two pieces, so the Y and Z measurements, to be half of the top X, because at the moment if you actually fold it over, it's a little bit overlapping, so you, in this middle bit here, if you're trying to put this in, it's more space than you need. So that's why it's always worthwhile making sure that these bits on the sides are always half of the length of the middle, and then it folds down flat. So right, let's look at how we're going to fix this to the top of the box. So now we've built the sunscreen, how do we keep this in place when we're using it day to day? There are two options for this. One is to use Velcro, and I'd suggest that you put a couple of pieces at the top, one at either end, and then two pieces at the bottom, and then install the other pieces within the lid of the box. Put the soft pieces onto the sunshade itself, and that means that if your sunshade is folded up and inside the case, then you don't have anything hard on here that could potentially scratch the screen or other components. The final way you can mount this, which is the way I do it, is use these little things, neodymium magnets. Now these are really small, super strong magnets. You can get them from our friends on eBay and other places, and what you can do is you can cut a small hole and actually push fit these guys in. Put a drop of foam safe CA glue or a little bit of hot glue at the bottom to do it, and then mount the corresponding magnet on the inside of the screen. Now on my large sunshade, so if I take this one away and actually show you the one that I use on my FPV kit, this is it. There are two magnets on the top, and then if I fold out the side, there's one to keep it in place at the bottom. And here you can see the corresponding magnets hot glued into the lid, and you can see how nicely it fits in place. So hopefully that's useful for you. You now know how to make a cheap and cheerful sunshade for about 7 or 8 quid if you have the Velcro already, or a couple more bucks if you need to buy the little neodymium magnets. It does look nice and professional. If you use a sharp blade, you get these nice crisp clean edges, and because you have the double folds on the shoulders, you haven't got these big gaping sides, and if you use hot glue to reinforce those shoulders, they'll last for a long time as hinges. So thank you for watching. Please comment and subscribe, and happy flying.